Now guys, please be quiet, because everything you're saying now will be on the video, which will be uploaded to the web. So if you look at the video again in 10 years and you said something during the video, it might not be good for you. So okay, let's talk about today a little bit about peer assessment. The first question, of course, that raises is, what is peer assessment? So we take a look at the definition. Peer assessment is a process where students and not the teacher are grading the projects or like the assignments of each other. And they do this using so-called benchmarks and rubrics. We have seen the term benchmarks before in this class. Back then we used it as a term to compare your own business values to the one of a competitor in the same field, and then through comparing these values, trying to figure out in which fields you can still advance a little bit your own company and get better. What it means concerning peer assessment is that the teacher is grading assignments, you are grading the same assignments, and afterwards you compare your way of grading to the one of the teacher. So you're benchmarking your way of grading to the one of the teacher. That's what we have on this slide. And the other point is rubrics. I'm pretty sure, at least I didn't know that term before I was doing this presentation, so I assume most of you don't know that term either. Let's talk about first about the problems we might have if we don't have rubrics. Okay, now just imagine we have a paper airplane contest and everybody makes a paper airplane, and we want to evaluate later on, okay, how good did our paper airplane fly? And I would give you one of these rubrics, either you can say excellent, good, satisfactory, or poor, or maybe just a scale from 1 to 5. What do you think are the problems that might raise if we do such an evaluation?
The scaling.
Okay, 1, yeah.
If I need to assess it myself, I'm not sure if it's a 3 or 4. I would want how far, or if it did loops, or if it was stable, or this only gives one number. I don't know how to.
That's right. So 2 points we notice here. First of all, we need a category, something like how far did it go, or was the design good, or something like that. That's a category. And then on the other hand, even though we have something like, okay, the fly, did our paper airplane fly well, we still don't know what is a 1, what is a 5. If I have a little child and their paper airplane goes 1 meter, I will probably assign them a 5. But if we do paper airplanes here in class, I would give for the same airplane only a 2. So this is exactly what rubrics are about. We need a description of when to apply which grade, basically. And this is exactly what rubrics are. Rubrics are a set of criteria for grading assignments, and it basically helps us to do a consistent grading for the same work. And rubrics are now just giving you a verbal description of which grade to assign to which performance. So if we continue with this problem of our paper airplane, a rubric might look like this. We have here a category which is creative design and in-air performance, and we have in total 4 different grades reaching from 0 to 3. And now you can see exactly, okay, if I'm supposed to assess the creative design of a paper airplane and I want to give a 1, then the paper airplane should fulfill whatever is saying in this box. So in this case, the student's redesign is not significantly different and so it's unlikely to serve your need. Giving the students these rubrics allows then consistent grading, because everybody knows how to apply, or everybody should know then which grade to apply to which airplane. So that is a rubric. Okay, let's talk about the advantages. Why should we even do peer assessment? Why? First of all, I was supposed to benchmark peer assessment to Coursera, how they did it there. So of course I was looking at examples of massive open online classes. And in massive open online classes, it's usually the only choice you have of assessment. Because 10,000 of students are taking the same class, and they don't know each other, and they are also not paying money. So you don't have money to employ teacher assistants who are basically grading the papers. That's the first problem. And then of course you can say, okay, I don't have teaching assistants, but I'm just going to ask multiple choice questions and that will be fine. But doing that doesn't allow you to give classes anymore where you have to write an essay For example, you can't give a class on poems anymore if you're just allowed to do multiple choice questions, because a big part of this class might be to write an essay. So, and this is exactly the point when peer assessment comes to play, because in these classes you can do peer assessment, the students are grading each other's essays, and you can actually ask questions where students have to write something down. Another advantage is that it is improving the metacognitive skills of the students, meaning that the students learn from like how the other students solve the problem, and it kind of develops your way of thinking for like future problems. So you see like your own mistakes, you get like new approaches of other people, and you can apply them to the next assignment you get. And the third point, of course, it kind of increases the students' responsibility and autonomy, just because you kind of feel like a teacher and you feel more important, and that kind of gets you more involved into the class. Okay, now let's talk about the peer assessment, how it's done in Coursera. Of course, I talked about this before. You should have always good rubrics. So at the very beginning, before like assessing any papers, the students are being handed a detailed rubric from the teacher or from the teaching assistant. But then, before the actually assessment of like their peers start, every student has to pass a so-called learning phase. And this learning phase is nothing else than doing benchmarking against the teacher. So basically, you're being given 3 tests that the teaching assistant filled out. He did typical mistakes for that certain assignment there. And then you're grading the assignments. And after you have been grading them, you see how the teacher would have graded them. So this is exactly benchmarking here. And every student will have to do that before he's grading any papers. Then we are getting to the actually peer grading process. So how does this work? Every student is getting 5 tests of their peers, of the peers in the same class. And actually only 4 of these tests were filled out by the peers, and 1 of them was filled out by the teaching assistant. This one test is the so-called ground truth, and it is later used for statistical methods to see, okay, did the student always give 2 good grades, or did he always give like 2 bad grades? And it allows you later on to run some statistical methods on this assessment project and see how well the students assess their peers. Okay, then of course the student is using the rubric to grade the tests or the projects of the other students, and he's also allowed to leave additional verbal comments, so he can say what he really liked, what he didn't like. He can encourage the student to enhance his skills more in a certain field, and so on. And this is very important. On Coursera, this process is completely anonymous. That means neither the grader nor the person who's being graded know like who the other person was. And that of course raises some problems. We will talk about that in a second, but keep that in mind, it's anonymous. The peer assessment then, like the whole process is not done then, because in the very last step you always do a self-evaluation. Which means after you have been grading the other exams or the other tests or projects, whatever it was, you are supposed to grade your own assignment. And now you can say, okay, what's the purpose of that? Because like, I mean, everybody of course would assign himself 100 to get a good grade, but they found a really clever way of doing that on Coursera. They said, if your self-evaluation scores within 5% of the overall score of all the students, you will be assigned the better grade. So actually they encourage students to really be realistic about their own work, because if they go within this 5% margin, or like if their own self-evaluation scores within this 5% margin, they will be assigned the better grade. So giving yourself 100, it's not helping you at all, but giving you a grade that is 5% better than like the grade that everybody else gives you, will give you in the end a better grade. So that is a really clever way, I think, of doing it. And of course, if a student is not participating in this whole process of peer assessment, he gets penalty points because it's a part of the class, and you just have to do that. Yeah. Let's talk now about the disadvantages or question. Yeah.
No, you have 1 minute.
Okay. Disadvantages and the problems you usually have. One problem, I mentioned it earlier, it's like the anonymity, which means if a person is giving you feedback, you don't really understand the feedback, like what he puts in the verbal box, you have no way of clarifying that because it's anonymous. Another problem is that students often complain that they are not qualified enough to grade their peers. They say, okay, I don't really know how to do this, this is not my job, and that might result in unuseful feedback or in feedback that is either too good or too bad. Another point is language problems. If we do peer assessment in massive open online classes, we have students taking the same class from all over the world. And it has been the case that they mentioned some Spanish students there who wrote their review in Spanish and then just put it to Google Translate and posted the English description in this box, and that of course it wasn't translated in a good way, so the feedback was really unuseful. And the last thing that has been found out is that the students usually have a tendency to grade towards the mean, so they kind of are frightened to give a really good grade and a really bad grade, so they always kind of stick to the middle. And there are some drawbacks, but the people from Coursera, or actually from the Stanford group where they did it for the first time, took a close look at it and developed some statistical models of how to improve the peer assessment process. So they kind of use values like, okay, if you're a good student and you grade somebody else, then your grade should get a higher value, or should count more percentage of the other grades that the person is getting, and they had some really cool ideas about that they put on this paper that I linked to the slide. You can take a look at that, it's really interesting. Okay. Yeah, that is actually my presentation so far. And now, now you can clap, thank you. You can ask questions, and afterwards I'm going to talk a little bit what I developed together with the Community Credit Committee, the CCC, and what we thought about, how we thought